Wait, a corrupt politician in New York? Now I've seen everything. And now it's happened. A grand jury has indicted Mayor Eric Adams with bribery, fraud, and soliciting political contributions from Turkish nationals. The indictment alleges that Adams used straw donors to bypass federal campaign finance laws and misused New York City's public matching fund system to receive over $10 million in public funds for his 2021 mayoral campaign. And Adams' top advisor, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, whose home was also raided as part of this investigation, went on the radio show, of her attorney, hold on, and said, no!
The New York City public will see that we have not done anything illegal to the magnitude or scale that requires the federal government and the DA's office to investigate us.
Yeah, guys, if you're in the mayor's office, you can do a little bit of crime, like a treat. Lawyers, only you can prevent your clients from going on your radio show and incriminating themselves. And in case you're wondering, yes, public officials really can go to prison for undisclosed travel benefits, unless they're Supreme Court justices, and unless the Supreme Court overturns their conviction, and unless it's an official act that they were going to take anyway. Yeah, we'll have to see if this indictment sticks, because federal bribery law is not in a great place right now. But the FBI has been serving search warrants on Adams' associates for months, so he knew what was coming. In a pre-recorded statement that looks like a deleted scene from HBO's The Penguin, Gotham's mayor claimed he was a target because he fought for everyday New Yorkers.
My fellow New Yorkers, it is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target.
Now, during his mayoral campaign, Adams said his 20 years as a police officer made him the right person for the job.
My pictures show me always surrounded by whom? By the police. I am associate of the law.
Yes, finally, the city of New York had a pro-NYPD mayor. Now, after Adams was elected, when the crime rate was at a 27-year high, he said he had it under control because New York had cops upon cops upon cops.
It's clearly a 27-year high. We're looking at some of those major issues around public safety that we knew we had to tackle. But we're doing far more than just the role of policing. Under the leadership of Deputy Mayor Phil Banks, we're seeing a real coordination between all of our law enforcement entities. One team, understanding that the New York City Police Department cannot and should not have to do this alone.
As it turns out, Deputy Mayor Phil Banks and his two brothers have their own corruption scandal, as does the former NYPD commissioner and his twin brother, and the police commissioner's replacement, and several of the mayor's aides. At this point, it might be faster to give you a rundown of all the people who aren't in deep legal trouble, but here's a quick rundown of all the mayor's scandals. There are at least 4 federal investigations involving officials appointed by Eric Adams. First, there's the investigation to Adams accepting bribes from Turkish officials, which is why he was just indicted. Second, the feds are looking into a bribery scheme involving a consulting firm run by Terrence Banks, who played a key role in fundraising for Mayor Adams. Federal agents seized the phones of several key City Hall officials, including the first deputy Mayor Sheena Wright. Wright's partner is David Banks, the chancellor of New York City's public schools. And after Adams was indicted, he changed the order of succession from first deputy mayor to deputy mayor for Health and Human Services, which seems to suggest that Wright will also be indicted soon. David resigns shortly before the Adams indictment. And the FBI also raided the home of a third Banks brother, Philip, a former police officer who serves as the deputy mayor of public safety. The third investigation also involves Nepo babies. The FBI is investigating former NYPD Commissioner Edward Caban's twin brother James, an ex-police officer who was fired in 2001. James currently runs a security firm and is accused of doing mafia-style shakedowns of local nightclub owners. James allegedly told nightclub owners that if they paid him thousands of dollars, he could get the NYPD to get off their backs. And during Edward's tenure as commissioner, the number of complaints against police officers soared, while Caban stopped the disciplinary cases of 54 officers from going to trial. Things are so bad at the NYPD that even the New York Post described Edward as, quote, increasingly authoritarian. Edward Caban abruptly resigned after the FBI seized his phones. And less than 2 weeks later, FBI agents searched the homes of Caban's replacement, Thomas G. Donlan, who may have been sitting on classified documents from the time when he served with the FBI and the State Office of Homeland Security. Now, the fourth federal investigation came to light in February when the FBI searched 2 properties owned by Winnie Greco, a senior advisor to Adams. Greco is a significant campaign fundraiser for the mayor who, quote, served as Adams' American-Chinese ambassador for 7 years without any disclosure of who, if anyone, was paying her. When Adams became the mayor, he hired her. In her disclosure forms, Greco asserted that she had never accepted any gifts. But after the FBI raids, mayoral counsel Lisa Zornberg demanded that Adams fire Greco. When he refused, Zornberg quit. But that's not all. Former Department of Buildings Commissioner Eric Ulrich, who was appointed by Mayor Adams, was indicted in 2023 on 16 felony charges, including conspiracy and bribery. The Department of Buildings makes an appearance in the Adams indictment because Adams is alleged to have leaned on the department to help a businessman who was funneling foreign campaign contributions to Adams. So yeah, that's a lot of corruption, nepotism, and bribery. Where's the Joker when you need him? Now, a lot of this goes back decades. In 2013, Eric Adams was elected Brooklyn Borough President. Borough presidents are elected by popular vote, and they serve as the chief executive of one of the 5 boroughs. According to the indictment, quote, within a year of becoming Brooklyn Borough President, Adams began building relationships with foreign nationals who were seeking influence with him. In 2015, a Turkish official started paying for Adams to travel to Turkey. The same official would later funnel illegal campaign contributions and improper gifts to the Adams mayoral campaign. On those early trips, he also met with a Turkish promoter, a Turkish businessman, and a Turkish businesswoman. The government alleges that all of these people later organized illegal campaign contributions when Adams ran for mayor of New York City. In 2016 and 2017, quote, Adams solicited and accepted free and heavily discounted luxury air travel from the Turkish airline as part of the Turkish official efforts to gain influence over Adams on 3 separate trips. Adams and his family members traveled to Nice, Istanbul, Beijing, and Sri Lanka, taking trips worth more than $35,000. When traveling, Adams and his companions stayed in fancy suites like the one on page 10 of the indictment. Yeah, Eric Adams should have known that the only American officials who are allowed to take free trips from foreign nationals are Supreme Court justices. Now, as always, this indictment are the allegations of the federal prosecutors and are yet unproven in court. But the indictment alleges a lot of different kinds of corruption. For instance, Adams allegedly took a lot of trips through Turkey at heavily discounted rates. At one point, his girlfriend said she was surprised that Eric flew to Istanbul on his way to Nice, France. He told her that Istanbul was always his first stop. Adams even tried to book the Turkish airline for a trip to Easter Island, which is 9,888 miles from Istanbul. Adams' lawyer, Alex Spiro, pointed out that most of these trips happened before Adams was mayor. However, Adams was an elected official at the time, and he was, quote, required to file annual disclosure forms with the Conflicts of Interest Board. On his 2016 and 2017 disclosure forms, Adams answered no when he was asked whether he accepted gifts or other items valued at over $1,000. And Adams' attorney, Alex Spiro, is arguing that everything is just related to upgrades which shouldn't rise to the level of illegal campaign contributions.
Gratuities are not federal crimes. Courtesies to politicians are not federal crimes. They do not violate federal law. Congressmen get upgrades. They get corner suites. They get better tables at restaurants. They get free appetizers. They have their iced tea filled up. That's just what happens. That's the truth.
And the indictment claims that Adams definitely knew he wasn't supposed to be accepting these gifts without disclosure. The government says Adams tried to use his scheduler to cover up the gifts, even instructing him to pay the Turkish airline with cash. But the Turkish airline confirmed that it never received cash payments from Adams. And the government says that exchanges between the scheduler and Adams were an attempt to create a paper trail. For example, in 2017, Adams told the scheduler that, quote, I left you the money for the international airline in an envelope in your top desk drawer. Please send it to them. Given the cost of the international business class tickets for Adams alone, Adams' email suggested that he left, at a minimum, well over $10,000 in cash in the Adams scheduler's desk drawer to send to the Turkish airline as payment for flights taken months earlier. He did not do that, as records from the Turkish airline confirm that Adams did not pay the airline, in cash or otherwise, because the tickets were complimentary. Was there any benefit to the Turks to giving discounts and freebies to a borough president? The government says yes, that Adams showed he was willing to do what his Turkish benefactors wanted, even when he was borough president. When the Turks learned that Adams maintained a friendly relationship with a Turkish community center in Brooklyn that was hostile to the Turkish government, they instructed him to stop associating with the center. He acquiesced to their demands. Current Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso said that when he succeeded Adams as borough president, Turkish officials offered him gifts, which he wound up returning.
When you came into Borough Hall as borough president, did you see things related to anything in this indictment that caught your eye?
Yeah, there was one part. I met with a Turkish consulate official. He came into the office and immediately was like, you should come to Turkey. We'll take care of you. We'll take it. We'll pay for everything. And, they made the request and they had no idea that they shouldn't have made that request. So they gifted me 10 elaborate gold-plated tea sets. We showed it to our GC and, we wrote a letter thanking them for it. Yeah, it's a general counsel. We wrote a letter thanking them for, the gift.
Now, Adams' lawyer, Alex Shapiro, says this is much ado about nothing. Spiro's arguing the entire case is about Adams getting first-class upgrades, and he says the Turkish airline involved suffered no losses because those seats were unfilled anyway. However, the government says that the case is really about Turkish nationals funneling illegal donations to Adams, which Adams then parlayed into over $10 million in city matching funds. That's because New York City's public matching funds program is part of the city's campaign finance system designed to encourage small donor contributions. The program offers matching funds for small contributions made by New York City residents to participating candidates. For every dollar a New York City resident donates to a candidate, the city provides matching funds at a set rate. Under current rules, this match can be as high as 8 to 1. For example, a $10 donation could be matched by $80 in public funds. Candidates who opt into the matching funds program must sign an affidavit agreeing to follow the law. By agreeing to these terms, candidates also accept restrictions on the type of contributions that they can receive. Quote, certain kinds of contributions were prohibited entirely, including 1, straw contributions, 2, contributions from a person who was not a United States citizen or a lawful permanent resident of the United States, 3, contributions from foreign entities and organizations, 4, contributions from corporations, and 5, contributions that were made, received, solicited, or otherwise obtained in violation of any local, state, or federal law. Adams started fundraising for a mayoral run back in 2018, and his friends the Turks were ready to help. Here's a hilarious text message exchange between an Adams staffer and the Turkish promoter that outlines a scheme to evade the campaign finance laws. Quote, the promoter stated in part, fundraising in Turkey is not legal, but I think you can raise money for your campaign off the record. So the Turkish promoter knew he couldn't give money directly to Adams. The Adams staffer could have ended the conversation right there. Instead, he invited him to explain how it would work. Quote, the Adams staffer inquired, how will Adams declare that money here? The promoter responded, he won't declare it, or we'll make the donation through an American citizen in the US, a Turk. I'll give cash to him in Turkey, or I'll send it to an American. He will make a donation to you. And it certainly seems like the promoter had done this before and was familiar with different ways to conceal a foreign donation. The Adams staffer should have said something along the lines of, oh, hell no, but instead he replied, quote, I think he wouldn't get involved in such games, they might cause a big stink later on, but I'll ask anyways. Now, another way the staffer could have approached this conversation would be to block this guy and warn his boss that someone wanted to make a straw donation, but instead, if the government is to be believed, the Adams staffer chatted with Adams and then reported back. Quote, the Adams staffer then asked, how much do you think would come from you? The promoter responded, max 100K. The Adams staffer wrote, 100K, do you have a chance to transfer that here? We can't do it while Eric is in Turkey. To which the promoter replied, let's think. After this conversation, the Adams staffer asked Adams whether the Adams staffer should pursue the unlawful foreign contribution offered by the promoter, and contrary to the Adams staffer's expectations, Adams directed the Adams staffer pursue the promoter's illegal scheme. Now, if you've been indicted in the Southern District of New York for scheming with foreign nationals, your only hope is a whole bunch of good lawyers. But if you want a great lawyer, my law firm, the Eagle team, can help. If you've gotten in a car crash, suffered a data breach, especially if you've got a data breach letter saying your information might have been leaked, or are dealing with a workers' comp or social security issue, we can represent you or help find you the right attorney. It's so important to talk to a lawyer right away so you can get the best representation and find out what your options are. So just click on the link in the description or call the phone number that's on screen for a free consultation with my team. Because you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle team. Now, the promoter wasn't the only Turkish national inquiring about how they could help Adams raise more money. During the same time period, Adams met with the owner of a Turkish university who was not eligible to donate to American elections, but Adams told his staffer that the businessman is, quote, ready to help, I don't want his willing to help be wasted, sick. And so the Adams staffer maintained contact with the Turkish businessman, quote, culminating in Adams accepting straw donations of businessman one's money. In January of 2019, Adams traveled to Turkey and stayed in a suite at the St. Regis in Istanbul. While there, Adams allegedly accepted more freebies and discounts while soliciting campaign contributions. Quote, during Adams' trip, the promoter arranged for Adams to meet a wealthy Turkish businessman, Businessman 3. The Turkish official, through the Adams staffer, discouraged Adams from meeting Businessman 3, who was then under suspicion of wrongdoing. Adams did nonetheless. And apparently Adams did not report his trips and instead attempted to conceal them. Quote, in March 2019, while exchanging text messages to plan another possible trip to Turkey, in which the airline manager would arrange travel for Adams, the Adams staffer texted Adams, to be on the safe side, please delete all messages you send me. Adams responded, always do. For these straw donations to be concealed, Adams and the Turks needed American citizens who would act as pass-throughs for the money. So in December of 2020, Adams allegedly accepted contributions from a businessman affiliated with a New York City construction company. Although Businessman 4 wasn't Turkish, Adams staffers told him that he could have more influence with Adams if he acted as a straw man for contributions by Turkish nationals. Businessman 4 then offered to write a $10,000 personal check, but since the individual contribution limit is $2,000, Adams staffers told Businessman 4 to direct his employees to make the contributions and then reimburse them later. The guy did as instructed, and Adams later sought city matching funds for the illegal contributions. Years later, when Adams was mayor, Businessman 4 allegedly was able to call in some favors. Adams helped resolve issues with the Department of Buildings. Quote, on February 5th, 2023, Businessman 4 sent a text message to Adams saying, among other things, I always supported you, but that Businessman 4 was having a hard time with DOB, getting a stop work order lifted, and that although Adams' staff had assisted, we reached a certain limit that only you can lift. Adams responded, let me look into this. Approximately a week and a half later, Businessman 4 replied to Adams, Mayor, brother, I want to thank you for your help. DOB issue partially resolved, and they promised to expedite the process. Thank you, you have my continued support. And the indictment describes similar schemes carried out by Adams, his staffers, and Turkish officials in 2021. And the promoter organized a dinner where his donations would be funneled through Turkish people who were green card holders in the United States. The government says Adams was involved in setting this up. Quote, in a series of messages with Adams and the Adams staffer, the Adams fundraiser sent the link to the Adams staffer to remind the Adams staffer of the mechanics of the plan they had discussed, that foreign donations would be concealed by routing them through US-based straw donors who could lawfully contribute in their own names. Adams wrote the Adams staffer and the Adams fundraiser, quote, we can't take any money from people who are not US citizens. The Adams staffer inquired, what about the green card holders? The Adams fundraiser responded, yes, we can, confirming that the promoter's plan to use green card holders as straw donors would work. In June of 2021, just before the election, Adams planned another trip to Turkey. His staff contacted a Turkish Airlines manager who had previously arranged free or discounted flights for him. Although the manager initially offered a $50 fare, Adams' staff insisted on a more realistic price due to public scrutiny. The indictment claims that Adams ultimately paid $1,100 for round-trip tickets that were later upgraded to business class valued at $15,000. Now, Adams won the election on November 2nd, 2021, and his Turkish friends celebrated. Businessman 1, are the elections over? Promoter, it was yesterday, sir. Everyone messaged me that he was elected. Congratulations, messages. He is most likely going to assign me as a representative, sir. I'm going to go and talk to our elders in Ankara about how we can turn this into an advantage for our country's lobby. Businessman 1, that would be nice. Now, you might be wondering what Turkish officials could achieve by bribing the mayor of New York City. Well, the government alleges that they got to open a shiny new consular building without a fire inspection, namely the Turkovi Center, a 36-story building located at 821 United Nations Plaza. The opening date of the skyscraper was important to the Turkish government because President Erdogan wanted to be present to open it during his visit for that year's opening of the United Nations General Assembly. But the building was not yet safe to be open to the public. Turkish officials started pressuring city officials to open the building without appropriate fire safety measures. And here's an email from the FDNY official describing the issues with the building. Quote, they have some major issues like central station and fan shutdowns, which should be an automatic violation order. Aside from that, he gave us a list with over 60 defects, and some of them with 5 to 10 problems in each one. FAIU would not go beyond 20 defects without issuing a violation order. In my opinion, this document does not take any liability that we would be comfortable with. I believe it actually tells us this building is not safe to occupy. Feel free to reach out to discuss further. And that's when Adams got involved. According to the indictment, the FDNY official responsible for assessing the building, quote, was told that he would lose his job if he failed to acquiesce, and after Adams intervened, the skyscraper opened as requested by the Turkish official. Once Adams convinced the FDNY to issue a conditional letter allowing them to open the building, his benefactors were happy. Quote, you are great, Eric. We are so happy to hear that. Prayer emoji, prayer emoji. You are a true friend of Turkey. Adams replied, quote, yes, even more a true friend of yours. You are my brother. I am here sick to help. At 2:30 p.m., the Turkish official confirmed, quote, you are such a friend. At 2:31, the fire prevention chief sent the conditional letter of no objection to the private alarm engineer. And the indictment also says Turkey wanted Adams to take their side on the existence of the Armenian genocide. Officially, the Turkish government does not recognize the mass killings and forced deportations of Armenians during the Ottoman Empire from 1915 to 1917 as genocide. And in April of 2022, when the Armenian Genocide National Remembrance Day was fast approaching, the Turks pressured Adams not to make any statement recognizing it, and he complied with their request. All told, the Adams campaign allegedly raked in $10 million in illegal matching funds. Here's a chart on page 41 of the indictment showing all the trips that Adams took between 2016 and 2021. But as usual, it's not just the crime, it's also the cover-up. Adams and his co-conspirators allegedly tried to cover up their conduct. On November 2nd, 2023, the FBI executed search warrants on the Adams fundraiser, Businessman 5, and the Adams staffer. Quote, after learning that FBI agents had arrived at her residence, but before answering their repeated knocks at the door, the Adams fundraiser called Adams 5 times, even though the agents had not yet given the Adams fundraiser any indication of the purpose of their visit. When the Adams fundraiser then spoke with the FBI agents, she agreed to discuss many subjects, but refused to say who had paid for her 2021 travel to Turkey. As the FBI agents departed the Adams fundraiser residence, Adams attempted to call the Adams fundraiser phone. Later, quote, the Adams staffer also agreed to speak with FBI agents. At one point during her voluntary interview, the Adams staffer excused herself to a bathroom and, while there, deleted the encrypted messaging applications she had used to communicate with Adams, the promoter, the Turkish official, the airline manager, and others. LegalEagle pro tip number 1, do not voluntarily talk to the FBI. LegalEagle pro tip number 2, when you are speaking to the FBI, which you should not do, see tip number 1, do not go to the bathroom and attempt to flush or delete evidence. And this indictment claims that Adams tried to pressure his associates into lying. On June 12, 2024, the FBI met with businessman 4 and 4 of his employees who had made straw payments. Just hours later, Adams employee number 1 hightailed it over to businessman 4's company headquarters, where, quote, Adams employee number 1 stated he had just met with Adams at City Hall. Adams employee number 1 proceeded to discuss with businessman 4 what had happened with the FBI and encouraged businessman 4 to lie to federal investigators. Adams employee number 1 then asked to address businessman 4's 4 employees who had made straw donations to the 2021 campaign and encouraged them to lie to federal investigators as well. Adams employee number 1 then took photographs of the subpoena that had been issued to businessman 4 to send to Adams. LegalEagle pro tip number 3, if you know that your co-conspirators were just interviewed by the FBI, do not give your co-conspirators instructions on how to lie to the FBI. And also take note of LegalEagle pro tip number 4. Do not implicate your boss in the meeting where you just pressured the co-conspirators to lie by sending him photographs of the subpoena. Adams, according to the indictment, wasn't done meddling. The day after businessman 4 met with the FBI, quote, Adams employee number 1 told businessman number 4 that he had met with Adams at City Hall earlier that day and they had left their cell phones outside the room in which they met so that it would be, quote, safe to talk. Adams employee number 1 explained to businessman number 4 that although Adams was upset that law enforcement had approached businessman 4, Adams believed that businessman 4 would not cooperate with law enforcement. LegalEagle pro tip number 5, do not pass on a message from your boss telling your co-conspirator not to snitch shortly after they met with the FBI. Now, obviously the Biden DOJ is doing an absolutely terrible job of targeting only the president's enemies, having now indicted and convicted Democratic Senator Bob Menendez and now Adams. But the government has charged Adams with wire fraud in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1343. Adams is accused of participating in a scheme to fraudulently obtain public matching funds for his campaign by falsely claiming that certain contributions qualified for these funds. And as we've talked about before, wire fraud involves using electronic communications in interstate or foreign commerce to further the scheme. Next up are 2 counts of soliciting contributions from foreign nationals, which violates 52 U.S.C. 30121 and section 30109. Now, the indictment says Adams allegedly solicited, accepted, and received contribution from foreign nationals in connection with his mayoral campaigns, which is illegal under federal campaign finance law. And the 4th count is for federal program bribery in violation of 18 U.S.C. 666. The indictment says that as mayor, Adams is an agent of a local government that receives federal funds, and Adams corruptly solicited and accepted valuable benefits like luxury travel in exchange for being influenced in his official capacity, including actions favorable to those providing the illicit benefits. And the 5th count is for our old friend conspiracy in violation of 18 U.S.C. 371. Now, it's probably not terribly surprising that Adams' political career could end with corruption charges. This is a guy who once said this about New York.
New York. This is a place where every day you wake up, you could experience everything from a plane crashing into our trade center to a person who's celebrating a new business that's open.
But Adams has said he will not resign. He blamed the Biden administration for targeting him rather than targeting illegal immigrants. And right-wing media quickly came to Adams' defense, arguing that the Biden DOJ is targeting Democrats who are tough on illegal immigration. And Trump agreed, giving some hope to Adams that he might get a pardon if Trump is elected. Now, corruption among elected officials is a serious matter, but it's hard not to laugh at all the Eric Adams text messages and the accompanying sick marks in the indictment. From using the wrong here to calling Istanbul, Eric Adams really could have used today's sponsor, Grammarly. Now, I've been using Grammarly for ages. It's my favorite tool that makes spelling and grammar perfect. But I've also really enjoyed using Grammarly Pro because it leverages the power of generative AI to improve my writing on whatever platform I'm writing on. The best part about Grammarly Pro is that it doesn't just give feedback on my syntax and spelling, it understands my context and goals and provides relevant suggestions. Grammarly Pro works on substance, not just style, and it does that all in one place, so I don't have to constantly toggle between different tabs and apps or tediously copy and paste the suggestions. And Grammarly Pro helps ensure my writing matches the tone I want and provides high quality writing that I can substitute in. If I'm writing to opposing counsel, I can tell Grammarly I want to be formal, confident, and direct, and Grammarly gives me suggestions on how to tweak my writing to match those parameters. If I'm writing to colleagues or friends, I can make sure I'm coming across human, and not like a lawyer. And as a lawyer and content creator, I have to do a lot of script writing, and Grammarly helps me translate legal jargon into something more readable. And through its strategic suggestions feature, Grammarly anticipates why I'm writing and helps me achieve the goal that I'm trying to achieve. So for example, if I need a call to action but I didn't put one in, or a summary needs a little more information, Grammarly will help give me a heads up. You'll be amazed at what you can do with Grammarly. So sign up and download Grammarly for free with the link that's on screen or down below. And you can upgrade to Grammarly Pro to really level up your productivity. So if you'd like to upgrade, you can get a discount at the link below. And after that, click on this link over here for more Legal Eagle, or I'll see you in court.